70s. So how good a sign is that from what we saw yesterday, the way he played tee to green and on the greens, that he took kind of a mediocre day and then made it a 1 over par 73 to keep him in it?
Well, when Tiger Woods was playing what is arguably the best golf that any man has ever played back in 2000, I watched him play a lot that summer. And what I marveled at was not so much how many birdies he made, and even at places like Pebble Beach where he won a tournament by 15 strokes, Tiger Woods just absolutely hates to make bogeys. Today he hates it. He hated it back then. And he has an uncanny ability to be able to turn bad situations into good ones. He was in some terrible spots yesterday, but he has always had so much self-confidence and belief, and he just despises making those bogeys. And you're right. He could turn a 74. I always said I saw him turn a lot of 74s into 70s, not necessarily 68s or 7s, but into 70s, and most players don't have the ability to do that.
If you could pinpoint something yesterday, Notah, having not seen him play competitively, but seeing him personally for the last couple of months as much as you did, that gives you a good sign leading into round 2 as he tries to make the cut and then give himself a chance to win another green jacket. What did you see yesterday that perhaps gave you a smile and some pause that said, okay, things are okay?
Well, two things, and they were 2 consecutive pitch shots on 11 and 12. I thought that based upon what we had seen at Waste Management and Farmers, that ball could have very well ended up in the water, and it would have been very easy to do what Rory did at that whole location, which is leave it 6-8 feet short, play a little bit tentative, because that ball will run out a tiny bit. I mean, he knocked it 8 feet past the hole. He was trying to get it close and maybe just a little bit too much pace on that pitch shot. And the drop shot after knocking it in the water, I mean, he could have lost his grip on the round. I think and he could have gone back to a full yardage. And he opted not to. He said, this is the shot that is required to get this as close as possible to the hole. And he dropped it in. I couldn't tell you how many texts I got from past players and friends that know Tiger, have played golf with Tiger, that were sort of inspired by the fact that he took on the shot that was called for in that particular situation.
I will never forget about 10 years ago, Tiger saying something. It was amazing to me, and I'll never forget it. And it reminded me of that yesterday when we saw him on 12. I'm glad you brought it up. He said, sometimes people take what they think is the comfortable shot. What you need to do when you're playing at the highest level is play the correct shot and live with the consequences. Yesterday at 12 was a perfect example of that, which might actually mean that he is back above the shoulders to perhaps where he was years ago, because he took the correct shot and he hit a great one, but he lived with the consequences of the correct shot as opposed to going back farther and maybe playing the more comfortable shot based on what we've seen the last couple of months, Mark.
Well, I've been saying for a month now that when he did come back, I thought the single most important thing for Tiger was to come out and play the correct shot and not do things like we saw him do in Phoenix, where he was hitting 4 irons from 30 yards off the green. I was very interested to hear Tiger say after the round yesterday that the short game has always been the strength of his game. He was proud of himself for having gone out and hit those shots. And I thought it was just nothing almost short of miraculous, the 2 shots that Notah talked about that he played at 11 and 12. To me, the most important club in Tiger's bag today is going to be the driver, and particularly in one area of the golf course, the first hole and the 9th hole, which one goes away from the clubhouse, the other comes back. Those are 2 tee shots that Tiger really has trouble with. Yesterday, he hit the tee shot right of the bunker off the first, and on the 9th tee, he snap hooked it into the first fairway. Traditionally, he has had trouble with both of those tee shots at 1 and 9. I think he's going to have to drive the ball better today than he did yesterday, and those are going to be 2 very key drives for him.
Interesting, Notah. Tiger's always been a guy, as great as he always has been, who gets nervous on the first tee. So you can imagine yesterday the kind of spot he was in and what it was like for him to go out to the first tee for the first time in a couple of months. And I told you earlier I was out there because I wanted to just see what it was like, kind of get a feeling for it. And he seemed awfully calm yesterday. And I know he's not a huge fan of the first hole because it's beaten him up a couple of times, but he got away with the bogey, but he did hit the drive a little bit right, but it wasn't bad, and it wasn't anything that was crazy off the first tee.
And keys to Tiger round would be see how he gets out of the blocks. Those first 3 holes are going to be critical for him, in specific that first hole. Now we're taking a look at Jason Day, who put together a stellar round. Perfect case of what has to happen out here is sometimes it doesn't come early, and he stayed patient, and then finally he kept knocking on the door, and then somebody finally answered in that middle section of the round. Most amount of birdies he's made in a row at the Masters in his career, and it really pushed him up into that leaderboard where he knows that he can win this tournament. And it's just a matter of staying patient and putting together the types of shots that are required here, and he has all the tools.
Mark, that's his caddy and his swing coach, Cole Swatton. They met when Jason was very young back in Australia. I mean, he loves him like a brother. He loves him like a father. He's with him the whole time. And Jason Day is in a very comfortable position right now with his life, at home with Ellie and his child, and also with his game right now.
Well, you know, for people that don't really know the Jason Day story, he was quite a troubled youth. And in the years sort of between the ages of 10 and 15, could have headed in a really bad direction, and got his life turned around. And one of the men who really helped him more than anyone else is the man who's carrying his bag around Augusta National this week. And it's just a very heartwarming story to see how Jason Day has changed as a person and not just as a golfer. You watch him play golf these days, though, you know, people don't necessarily talk about certain aspects of his game. That's because they're all good. He drives the ball long and straight. He is a terrific putter. He's one of the best pitchers in the game. His short iron shots in and around the greens are tremendous. And I, for a long time, was saying, when everybody else was talking about Matt Kuchar or Lee Westwood or Sergio Garcia as the best players, let's say, to have never won a major, I always felt like for the last 4 or 5 years it was Jason Day. I was starting to think it might be Jordan Spieth now, but right now it's a head-and-head between those two guys. Jason Day was my pre-tournament favorite here, and he still is right now.
And it's so perfectly suited Augusta National for his game, isn't it, Nona?
It is, and the mindset that he's had in the last 6 months, I had a couple of real great conversations with him toward the end of last year, and he actually mentioned to me that if Tiger would ever want to practice with him and play a few extra rounds with him down in Florida, because he was always looking to try and get some a little bit of insight into maybe what it's like to go to that next level. He wants to win that major championship, and he wants to elevate his name to the highest levels, and he's willing to do whatever it takes, whether it means practicing with certain players. The practice rounds this week, I mean, he played with some guys with a lot of experience, and I think that's something that tells me that he's willing to make those extra types of moves to increase his golf IQ.
People sometimes forget that when he was coming out of Australia, he was a bit of a prodigy. He was that good, that highly touted, that a lot of people thought he was going to be the guy who was going to